Bom dia, boa tarde, boa noite, or whatever the case may be. My name is Marcus, and I am the host of the Black Brazil Today YouTube channel, as well as the blackbraziltoday.com blog, where I analyze Brazil from the perspective of race. So tonight I want to react to a video that I just discovered actually today. Somebody sent me this video. And, I've watched a number of documentaries and films and, television specials about, race in Brazil, Black Brazilians and such. And, there's no way to know all of them. So, every time I come up with a film, a short film or a documentary that's from years ago, or something that I definitely want to check out. So somebody sent me this today, and I was like, there's several pieces of this documentary that I want to react to. Today, I'm just going to take a small excerpt and just talk a little bit about it. So I'm really focusing on something that this woman said, and then how she was talking about, how her daughter sees the situation or sees herself in terms of race. There's a lot to unpack just in this little, it might be about a minute long, if that minute, I don't know, maybe minute and 15 seconds. But it fits into the narrative that I talk about on this channel all the time. So I definitely wanted to discuss it real quick. Um, Today's video, I'm calling it "My Daughter-in-Law Has a Black Son. Knows she's black, but curses our race." So before I go into this video today, definitely like this video, share this video, subscribe to the channel, click on the notification bell. With that said, I want to put this in context first, as usual. Then I want to get into this short excerpt that I wanted to react to today. So a few things that I want to discuss here. Brazil's constant rejection of blackness. For years, many people of visible African ancestry just straight up denied that they were black. There's kind of like a pushing back and forth going on right now between Brazilians of visible African ancestry who've come to accept themselves as black versus those who saying, no, you're not black, you belong in the mixed category. So it's going back and forth. Okay. That's why this is one of the reasons why I always say we'll never know just how many black people there are in Brazil, because nobody can have a clear agreement on what constitutes being black in Brazil. This denial of blackness, I think it comes from not only black people themselves, but also white people, to the point where a black person comes to see themselves as black, and white Brazilians will be the first one to try to eliminate that identity. Like, well, you're not black. Why would you call yourself black? Because defining oneself as black in Brazil has always been considered like an insult. Like anyone who's considered intelligent or attractive or whatever, if they have these positive qualities that's always been associated with whiteness, then automatically people will feel like, oh, well, she's too intelligent to be black. Oh, she's too pretty to be black. All right. But in the last, I want to say, decade and a half, there's been a real push for racial identity politics where more and more black people or persons of visible African ancestry are defining themselves as black. So Brazil has come a long ways in terms of how we discuss the race issue, because, 25, 30 years ago, people didn't discuss race so openly as they do now. Okay. A lot of changes have come. My immersion into Brazil back in like the year 2000, it was like perfect timing, because I saw this as somebody who's witnessed this whole thing, this development of black identity over the last 25 years, 24 years. I've personally witnessed it. Brazil has come a long way since New Year's of Christmas Eve of 1999, when I first started getting into the Brazil thing. Again, this is why, because of these different interpretations of what it means to be black, this is why I believe we'll never really know how many black people there are in Brazil, because nobody can come to an agreement on what constitutes black. So the film that I saw today it's either from 1988 or 1989. It's called A Raça na Praça. And as I said, a lot of people said some really intriguing things in this little documentary. I'm glad somebody posted it. I had never seen it before. Description of the documentary. The issue of racism as seen from the point of view of black children and adults walking around Praça da Sé in downtown Sao Paulo. Organizations in the Praça da Sé area dedicated to the black cause, the issue of police repression against black children. So as I said, the documentary is about 30 minutes long. And there's just numerous sections of this video that I want to react to eventually. I'm not going to do them all at once, but maybe just cut up a few pieces here and there. So first one I want to concentrate, the excerpt is this video that I saw where a black woman is talking about how her daughter, it's funny because she says her daughter knows she's black, but she thinks she's white. So it's kind of this is what I used to run into when I first started going to Brazil, because my first experiences in Brazil were in the state of Bahia. And you find a lot of, dark skinned black people, brown skinned, light skinned people of mixed race or whatever. And I would consistently run into people who I would say, this person looks black to me. And they'll tell me, no, I'm not black. I'm a moreno. I'm a mestizo. I'm a pardo, whatever it was. All of these terms meaning, in some ways they just mean mixed, various races. In some ways, people would use such terminology to avoid being defined as preto or negro, both meaning black, at all costs. So let me first get into what the video, what the woman is saying, and then what her daughter is saying in terms of being black. So what I'm going to do right now is I'm going to just overdub what's being said in this video. So hang on, check it out, and then I'm going to come back. Because at home, my son is black, I'm black. My daughter-in-law has a little black boy, and she curses the race a lot. She curses the race a lot. She knows she's black. Why does she get in the race then? You don't like blacks? No. Why don't you like blacks? Can you tell me? Blacks are too ugly to my face. You don't like it. She thinks she's white. She thinks she's white, right? And she doesn't like the boy. Because blacks sometimes don't want to be black, He's ashamed to be black. This is our Brazil's evil. He is ashamed to be black. So anyway, you heard what what was said in that video. I mean, this is an example of what I noticed for several years, like within the first, 5 to 10 years I was going to Brazil. You would often run into people who you might have saw as black, who I might have seen as black, but they didn't see themselves that way. Who am I to impose somebody's identity? But it always threw me for a loop when I would see people like, yeah, it looked like a black woman or a black man to me. Okay, but whatever. That's how you see yourself. So what we see here is that how Brazil has stigmatized blackness for so long and so good that people will escape being black at all times. This documentary is from 1988. A lot was going on in 1988 because they were celebrating the 100 years of the abolition of slavery in Brazil in 1888. Brazil was the last country in the Americas to abolish slavery. So that was a big year. A lot of documentaries were coming out, a lot of music. I remember seeing a lot of like magazine covers that were celebrating this 100-year anniversary as well. So even though this video kind of explains what I've been talking about for some years, because it may seem like the norm that most persons of visible African ancestry in Brazil would define themselves as black now, but years ago that wasn't always the case. I would also argue that even with the rise of black identity in Brazil, you still have the country was recently defined as a majority mixed race country, because the Pardo category, which means brown or mixed, though that category is the majority in Brazil because it passed a white population. Now, this is intriguing because before people would say that Brazil was a black majority because it was a mixture of the two color categories that mean black and brown, preto and pardo. But the numbers of those declaring themselves specifically black, being preto, increased over the years, as well as the number of people who define themselves as pardo or brown or mixed also went up, to the point where people of mixed race who declare themselves as pardos are actually the far out majority. It passed the white population. To me, that represents because the white population was said to diminish, and I believe some of that has to do with some of the white Brazilians would move over to the pardo category because they, what I say about whiteness in Brazil is that people may be seen or accepted as white in Brazil, but they go to another country like the United States and they understand they're not seen as white. So I think what happened there is that you had more white Brazilians move it over into the brown mixed category. And then some people in the mixed brown category were moving over to the black category. That's the way I see it. But this video speaks volumes, for people to understand how the race thing works in Brazil. Like, this is not a great picture of this young girl or this young woman here, but you can clearly see she's a couple shades or maybe several shades lighter than her mother. Okay. So why is the video like this important? This is from 1988, because as I've said, people didn't always define themselves as black. Black identity politics is something that has risen, like I said, over the last 10 to 15, maybe 20 years. I've seen the progress going on there. The transition into just like pessoa de cor, a person of color, or pardo, mestizo, mulatto, and moving over into the black category. One other thing that I wanted to point out that struck me about what the mother said, it was in reference to what her daughter was saying or how her daughter thinks. She said that her daughter has a black boy. And then she said that the daughter doesn't like the black boy, that her daughter doesn't see herself as black, that she sees herself as white, even though she knows she's black. This speaks volumes to this, what's called the whitening ideology, not only in, producing whiter looking kids, but this whitening of the black identity in Brazil, where a lot of people will deny that they're black. So, where does this come from? I did a video maybe about a week or so ago where it was talking about the Brazilian fear of having black children because people have fear of their children suffering the racism and the violence that they experienced as black children as well. So if the mother thinks that she's white and she has a child, and this child is either clearly black or can't pass for white, then it's a possibility that this mother may, because of the whitening process in Brazil, this psychological rejection of black identity, that may be one of the reasons why, the mother says that her daughter doesn't like her child. Maybe she didn't produce a white child. If she doesn't see herself as black, in turn, what is she going to pass on to her son? This rejection of the black child or identity can be passed. Well, let me rephrase that. If she has a rejection of being black herself, in turn, what is she going to pass on to her child? Now, her child, I don't know what the child looks like. Either the child is lighter or darker than her. But if she already has that mentality in her head, it's very likely that she's going to pass this anti-black attitude on to her own child. This is something, and then we're talking about the late 80s. Again, this was a period when a lot of black parents didn't speak to their children about the concept of race or racism or the types of things that these children might experience in life just because of what they look like. If the parents have gone through some humiliating circumstances because of what they look like and they don't prepare their children for it, what are the children going to grow up thinking? Right. So that really struck me when I heard I guess this would be the grandmother, her child being, the mother of another black child. And then, we see examples of this when we look at, celebrities, well-known people in Brazil. We see this all the time. We can just look at like players like Neymar or Ronaldo, and they've both made statements over the years that where they don't feel like they're black. Neymar said, well, I don't suffer racism because, I'm not really black. And then Ronaldo also said the same thing. Like, I think it might have been somewhere between 2008 and 2010. It might have been earlier than that. I know he was still playing in Europe at the time, and he said, I as a white man. So this is something I just wanted to add because that's something that popped up that struck me when the black mother said this about her daughter, and this is something that, when you don't have these discussions at home, particularly in a country like Brazil, people do grow up confused and denying that even though other people might see them as black or deceive them into not seeing themselves as black, this can lead to bigger problems in the future, which again makes it difficult for us to understand, well, who's black and who's not in Brazil. So we see how this works when we look at just some of the famous people in Brazil. Neymar, who was famous before he got really famous, after 2010 or so, he was famous for giving an interview and experience racism either on the field or off the field because, I'm not really black, right? And I always wondered what he meant by that because what I'm saying is, Neymar is not the darkest crayon in the box, it's true, but I would come to define himself as black, okay? This was a story from 2014 because people were consistently disappointed in how Neymar saw himself. So this is an article from 2014, Neymar and Racism, a Tragedy in 4 Acts. This just talks about, and 2014 was when Brazil hosted the World Cup for the first time. Well, it might be the first time in years. So all eyes were on Neymar. Everybody was expecting Neymar to bring a title, back to Brazil. They hadn't won a title since 2002. Neymar famously got, injured and taken off on a stretcher in that tournament. But this is just how people were embarrassed by how Neymar was approaching the race issue at that time, from flat out denying it. He participated in this whole we're all, what was it? I forget what that campaign was called. It was like a few years later, there was an issue, a situation where a banana was thrown in the field in Spain, and one of the Brazilian players on I think it was Barcelona, he picked up the banana and ate it, and they created a whole campaign around that. It was kind of ridiculous. People were like, racism is a serious issue in Brazil, and here it is, you guys are making fun of it just, by using a banana, right? I mean, it's kind of ridiculous because the worst racial slur you can call somebody in Brazil is to call them a macaco or a monkey. And here they were creating a campaign around a very serious incident. This is what it was called. Somos todos macacos. We are all monkeys. So this campaign started. It was just kind of like, is this a joke? I'm not going to stay focused on that, but it was like these were four situations where Neymar just embarrassed people for, his stance on the racial question. Let me see. This is an article that I never got around to posting. I think it was from 2023. Ronaldo the phenomenon. He was one of the greats in the mid to late 90s and the early 2000s. But Ronaldo famously said that he was not black. He was speaking as a white man. See if I can find that original article. Let me see if I can find it up here, if I still have it. Okay, so just like Neymar doesn't see himself as black. And then years later, because of a racist incident that happened over in Europe, he came out and said, look, I'm a black man. My father's black. My grandfather's black. I'm a black man. And he started positioning himself on the racial issue. This is in 2019. Does former football superstar Ronaldo still see himself as a white man? Because this is what he famously said. He said he's white. It was just like, dude, are you crazy? Years later, Ronaldo would come around and he would start positioning himself on the racial issue. Also, he participated in a popular podcast by the rapper Mano Brown, where he spoke on how his hair, the texture of his hair and experiences with racism led him to transition into blackness. Okay, so this is Mano Brown. His podcast is called Mano a Mano. And he just, race was one of the topics that he spoke about on that particular podcast edition. This is, of course, Ronaldo in 2002 when he had that crazy haircut. That was the last time Brazil had actually won the World Cup. That's 22 years now. Okay. What else do we have here? This is another incident that kind of shows you how Brazilians see race. Every year, I think they cut this category out now. For years, people were complaining, stop having a naked black woman, doing a samba on TV in front of everybody. It's how people saw it. That's the stereotypical image of black women, just like, they're only worth, sensuality or sexuality, you know. And so this image, Globeleza, would signal that Carnival would be coming, and they would have these 30-second to a minute and a half vignettes that would come on, and you have this black woman, usually lighter skin, dancing a samba, and she was completely naked except for some body paint. Now, those women all tended to be light brown skin until about 2014, when a clearly dark-skinned black woman won to take over and they had a reality show to name the new Globeleza girl. Globeleza being a mixture of the word global, which is the top television network in Brazil, and the word beleza, which means beauty, like Global's beautiful woman representing the Carnival season, which is coming. This woman won the competition. She was the darkest woman. I think maybe 4 women had been the Globeleza before her, and they were all either light skin or light brown skin. So she was the darkest woman. And so when this woman won the competition, Brazilians started humiliating her. They started calling her, the M word. I already mentioned macaco and what that means. You had people dressing up in blackface like this guy right here. The public's negative, the negative reaction of the Brazilian population, it led to the girl being taken off of her position. She had won the position fair and square, but it was just like, it was clear that people thought she was too dark to be the Globeleza girl. Here you got people comparing her to the Little Zay, or what was it? I think they called him Little Zay in the film. In the English version, it was Zay Pequeno in Portuguese. So they had her side by side and saying, she looks like Zay Pequeno. I mean, I can just imagine, this must have been humiliating for her. These are 2 of the other Globeleza girls before her. Everybody knows Valeria Valencia. She was the representative for years, and she passed the baton on to Aline Prado. Let me see if I have the newer girl. Might be in another post. But I think it was The Guardian. They covered this story. They actually came to Sao Paulo, and I participated in an interview for their 8-minute documentary. It was called Too Black for Brazil, exploring one woman's rise and fall due to the politics of skin color. And that's the same story. People came on my Facebook page calling me macaco and darky. So they took the position from her because Brazilians rejected her, just saying, basically she's not pretty, and she's too dark for this role. And then they replaced her with this girl. So the standard Globeleza girl is about this complexion. Shortly after Global announced a new lighter skinned Globeleza without a public vote. That's from 2016. So colorism going on. You see this colorism, you see this idea that Black people are not supposed to be considered beautiful. When you look at 70 years of the Miss Brazil competition, there's only been 3 Black women who've won the competition. And all of those 3 Black women are either light brown or light skinned. Daisy Nunes won the competition in 1986, becoming the first a person of visible African ancestry to win the crown for Miss Brazil. Another 30 years will go by before another Black woman would win. And then 2016, 2017, Black women won this competition, back to back. Revisiting when Black women won the Miss Brazil pageant 2 years in a row. Why did this bother so many people? So as I said, even though, okay, 2 Black women won 2 years in a row in 2016, 2017, but you'll notice neither one of them are very dark. So it's still kind of, it plays into the Brazilian rhetoric that says, you have to be closer to the whiter phenotype to be considered beautiful. Research shows that the way Brazilians see the color of celebrities reveals racial criteria in Brazil. This was intriguing because what people were doing, they were asking people, what did they think of Ronaldo, Camila Pitanga, and Zeca Pagodinho? And they were just asking people, do you define them as Black or brown? 64% of Brazilians identified Ronaldo as either Black or brown. This is former President Fernando Henrique Cardoso. I think he's got to be close to 90 now. Is he? I think he would be. I'm trying to remember. No, I think he was born in 31. So he got to be about 93 by now. He was the president between what was it? I think 1998 and 2002. I think he was a president of 1994 to 2002 before Lula was elected for the first time. This is a picture of Cardoso as a young man or a young boy. You can clearly see it. It doesn't strike me as white either. Camila Pitanga has always been questioned as to why she identifies herself as Black. People would say, you're so beautiful. Why would you call yourself as Black? Because to find oneself as preto or negro, with both meaning Black, it would mean that you're seeing yourself as being inferior. It's basically to identify yourself as Black as to say you're stupid, you're poor, and you're ugly, right? Camila Pitanga kind of surprised people when she said that some years ago, and she stands by that. Okay. Of course, this is actress Thais Araújo. Again, Ronaldo there. You got Romario, a lot of famous soccer players in Brazil over the years. Singer Zeca Pagodinho. I think he defines himself as Black as well. What else do we have up here? Racial classification and terminology in Brazil. I always talk about Camila Pitanga because she represents what this whole conversation is about. Some people look at her and say, yeah, she's Black. Some people say, no, just leave she's brown and just leave it at that, while some people see her as white. I don't know. How do you see Camila Pitanga? Again, the question of Neymar, it says negro, ill, like Black, who, me? So Neymar would come to see himself as Black years later. Neymar is like in his early 30s now, so he started to come around in terms of the race issue. Again, this is about Ronaldo. Again, this is the situation with how people saw Neymar in the first 5 years, like after he first before he moved over to Barcelona. He started to become a huge star over in Europe. And this question of Blackness in Brazil has always been a complicated issue. A famous study said that in 1976, the Brazilian Institute of Geography and Statistics themselves and their skin color. All of these are just kind of terms, and it's translated just from USA Today, amarelo, that's in there, yellow, white, the honey colored white, branca morena, white but dark skin, branca pálida, pale white, and on and on. There's like 136 terms here, which is what makes the issue of race so complicated in Brazil, right? So this is why I wanted to put this in the context, because what this video was talking about is what I've been saying for years. Like, we're never going to know how many Brazilians are Black, because so many people deny that they're Black. Other people will see themselves as Black, and other people say you're not Black. So this goes on and on. This documentary was from 1988, and I think it exemplified perfectly how complex it is to define who is Black and who is not in Brazil. Anyway, if you want to check out the full documentary, I don't know if it has English subtitles. It probably has Portuguese subtitles, but I think it's called A Raça na Praça. Check it out on YouTube. So with that said, I'm going to end this video here. Make sure you like this video, share this video, subscribe to the channel, click on the notification bell so you know when I put up a new video. And with that said, I'm going to end the video here and request that you all come back. Check out the next video that I post. here at Black Brazil Today.